Good evening, everyone, and welcome to 7 with Kevin Live. My name is Kevin Maynard. I'm the Executive Director of Quad City Arts, where our mission is to enrich the quality of life in the Quad City region through the arts. And to do this, we work with hundreds of artists throughout the year who work in a number of mediums and genres. And these artists enrich our community through public art installations, gallery exhibitions, and more. Our team has the added benefit of getting to know these artists and getting to learn about them and their art a little bit more. And that's what we want to share with you. And that's what 7 with Kevin is all about. So why 7 with Kevin? We named the series after a monthly newsletter that I write. In that newsletter, I share 7 things. It ranges from things that I'm excited about, things that we are working on, and things that I'm interested in. So we created a list of 7 questions that reflect that newsletter. So it's a little random, a little fun, and hopefully a little thought-provoking. Now, if you have never read that newsletter, you can sign up for it at our website, quadcityarts.com. Now, if you are tuning in live and you have a question, go ahead and put that in the comment section. Tuning in live but don't have a question, still comment. Let us know where you're watching from, or maybe who you're watching tonight's episode with. Now tonight, we'll be talking with 2 artists who are currently on display in our downtown Rock Island gallery, Ron Meyer and David Van Allen. Now they will be on display at Quad City Arts until Saturday, August 15th. So you have just over another week to come in and see their great work. Now you can also meet both of these artists at the gallery on August 15th, 2 p.m. as we host an artist meet and greet. Now our first guest is exhibiting his show titled Jazz Noir Images. They are crafted in the style of Hollywood 1940s and 50s film noir cinematography. This cinematic style uses dramatic low-key, black and white, unbalanced composition and negative space to elicit suspense, mystery, and tension in the viewer. Please welcome Ron Meyer. Looks like we're having just a little bit of technical difficulties. We're getting a little static from Ron on this end. All right. Well, actually, looks like Ron's having a little technical difficulties. While we're sorting through that, we're actually going to flip to our second guest, and we'll start off with David. David Van Allen. Let me flip to my notes here. David Van Allen might have my favorite artist statement, which is simply, I can't get close enough. Now, after seeing his work and reading about his method, it makes perfect sense. But I'll let him share that with you. Please welcome David Van Allen.
Hi.
Good evening, David. How are we doing this evening?
Good.
Excellent. Now, before we kind of dive into your work, where are you joining us tonight from? Where are you joining us from?
I'm in my studio in Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
Excellent. Well, good.
It's a live-in studio, so it's also my residence.
Fantastic.
I could never afford a studio and a house or an apartment. So I combined them.
Excellent. Now, David, let's start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, including how you got started in photography.
How I got started? Well, I was wandering around, trying different things in my college years, undergraduate, I tried out dance. I thought I wanted to be a dancer, and I tried out singing. I went to St. Olaf College, and one of my goals was to get into the St. Olaf choir, and I even took voice lessons to sort of help that happen. I never got into the St. Olaf choir, but I was in one of the lesser choirs. They have about 5 choirs, and I've always enjoyed that. I was in choir in high school. It wasn't taking me anywhere though, and I wasn't that good. And so then I tried theater, and I tried dance, and I had some fun with theater, but I had a hard time memorizing my lines. And I tried dance, and dance, as soon as I thought about what I was doing, I was frozen and unable to do what I was supposed to do. You know, it's like the wrong parts of my brain were lighting up, and I just couldn't do it. And then I took a photography class. I went to St. Olaf College. I think I mentioned that.
Mm-hmm.
I would come back to Iowa City, my hometown, and I usually take one summer school class. And first one I took was psychology, and then I took a photography class. And that's sort of what launched me there. And I took a class in the art department here with John Schultz leading the way. Some of your listeners will remember John Schultz. He was the founder of the photography program at Iowa, and the founder of either the second or the third master's program in the country.
Wow.
Back in the 70s somewhere. No, 60s. Back in the 60s, late 60s, I think. Anyway, so that's where I started, and then I came back and took another photography class the next summer, and put together a small portfolio and applied to graduate school in photography at the same place at Iowa. And amazingly, got accepted into the graduate program in photography, having majored in English back in school. I didn't have an art major. Anyway, some of these details are more than really needed.
No, that's all good. David, now I'm really kind of fascinated by that story because it looks like that you've tried out just a little bit of every area of the arts. So it seems that you've always been interested in that. Did you have something that was like a catalyst in your life, somebody that just inspired you to be involved and stay involved with theater, dancing, and then obviously photography?
The previous generation was a bunch of scientists. My father was a neurologist. My uncle was a physicist. They didn't quite understand what I was doing, but what I came to learn is that that's sort of one of the requirements of going to graduate school in art is that your parents don't understand. If they do, you're doing the wrong thing.
So I'm curious, before we jump into your photography, do you still do any theater, singing, dancing, acting, anything like that?
Not much singing. No, hardly any. Theater. I was in a play 4 years ago and was reminded how much trouble I had remembering lines. That's a recent reminder. Still,
I could definitely understand and sympathize with that.
Yeah.
So David, I'm really kind of curious. So you started out doing your photography courses and you were accepted into the grad program.
Yeah.
What led you to doing the style that you're doing now? We'll pull up an image here shortly to kind of show people of the collages and the really great imagery that you're making out of that. So I'm curious, what led you from just starting out taking pictures to doing these big compositions?
Well, I would say my main influence is David Hockney. David Hockney is known to most people as a painter. He used to live in Los Angeles area, and now he lives in France. And he had a couple years foray into photography because he'd used photographs a lot as studies for some of his paintings. But then at one point he looked at his photographs and says, well, these are kind of interesting by themselves. Let's explore this. And he did a whole series of multiple images, collecting a sort of a panorama, both vertical and horizontal, uh, um, and put together a body of work on that. And I was just really captivated by that. He had photographed people, but he didn't really do portraits so much. It was like portraits in a space. So they're as much about the space, excuse me, much about the space as they are about the people. And he would do multiple moments in time. Obviously, you can't take all these pictures simultaneously. That's a pardon me. That's a completely different kind of picture. To have everything all happen in one fraction of a second. That's what most photographs are. It's just one shot. These are multiple shots, multiple moments in time, and time is one of the big elements that he was working with. I remember him saying that he thought photography had no time. So from a painter's point of view, the photographer, of course. From a photographer's point of view, you say, "Oh, yes, we do. we got here it is." But he said there was no time. But based on human perception, 125th of a second is sort of like doesn't register.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be somewhere around a 60th or a 1/30th of a second before the brain can actually witness something that it looks like. If you can calibrate your eyelids to do a 30th of a second or a 60th of a second. So it's a piece of time that's outside of normal human senses. And then, of course, you get even faster shutter speeds, like 500, 1,000, 2,000, and so you can stop action, and that allows you to see something that you couldn't see otherwise. And the big explorer with that one was Edward Muybridge in the late 19th century, who photographed a galloping horse going by to solve a bet between two rich guys. They're betting at what point does the horse's all four legs come off the ground simultaneously? At what point are they all off the ground? And prior to this time, depictions of horses in paintings were never quite nailed it, never quite got that accurately. Horses were usually, if they're in a gallop, their front legs are out forward and their back legs are out backwards, like they're leaping over a jump. That's not the point at which all four legs are off the ground. Anyway, so he had a whole row of cameras and a whole row of strings to trigger as the horse went by, and recorded the minutia, the moments of that thing, and got and concluded that the point at which all four legs are off the ground is when the front legs are tucked in and the back legs are tucked forward. So anyway, so time's a big deal.
Yeah. Actually, I would love to pull up a piece of your work that is currently on display here at Quad City Arts, and have you kind of talk about this process to create one of these. One of the things I will say that to anybody who has been in our gallery or comes down to our gallery to see this exhibit, I would really recommend obviously reading both of our artist statements from each artist, but particularly David's, because David, you have really kind of created a great document that shows that tells the process to create one of these images that I thought was very fascinating. So if we'll pull up one of those so that people can kind of see your work before you talk about that. So so as our viewers can see here, that it is many images that are pieced together, and right. One of the things that I also found as fascinating is that you don't use a digital camera.
No. Old school. So each one of those little interior rectangles is a separate negative or a separate picture, and so the ones near the top were taken, right up here like this, and then ka-chunk, 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 ka-chunk. Usually I start out just sort of doing the outline first, and then I fill in the interior. So each one of those is a separate negative. And and it's shot with a close-up lens. It's a 55 millimeter micro Nikkor lens, a flat field corrected macro lens. And I'm only about 4 or 5 inches away from the subject when I take each of those fragments. So there's an interesting psychology that we don't usually have in the photographic situation, where I'm right in their face. I'm right in their private space. You know, that's the only people you usually let into that space are like your wife or your husband or your mom. Getting that, you know, the next step is that you get a kiss when somebody's that close to you. And so here's this guy, in some cases a complete stranger, walking around inside your private space. So it can be a little intimidating. I try to make it so that people are able to deal with it without too much discomfort. Although people usually are pretty relieved that the thing is over. Anyway, so each one of those is a different camera position also. So the camera is moving. So each one of them is a different point of view, you know, literally point of view. So in some cases, I'm seeing the top of something and the bottom of something, like the top of the head and maybe under the chin. Or if you've got your hand up here, you can see the underside of the fingers and you can see the top of the hand. But from one point of view, you wouldn't get all that information. Much of the information would be hidden because of your angle. And so that has a certain effect on people looking at them, I think. I've tried to sort of analyze this and theorize about what's going on. But it seems to me that when you have all these, as you look at the picture and you sort of move your eye around it, there's little adjustments or resets that the brain of the viewer has to do in order to read that, you know, correctly. And then there's also some little interruptions, you know, where if I've got this contour or this line, interior line or something, and it gets interrupted because it's broken, a broken line. And so that causes the brain to stop a little bit and then adjust. So people usually tend to spend more time with one of these than they would with a regular portrait. You know, a regular portrait, you know, they'll spend enough time to sort of, first of all, figure out who is that? And second of all, you know, maybe admire the lighting, which I do with Ron's work quite a bit. He has beautiful lighting. Okay, so this is a portrait of John Tinker. Some of you will know of John Tinker. He's a native Iowan. Well, no, I think he was born in Texas, but he spent a lot of time in Iowa. Now he lives in Missouri. You know, Tinker versus the Des Moines Board of Education back in '68. This was a black armband, high school students wearing black armbands to high school to protest the Vietnam War. Anyway, he and his sister and a couple of friends were all kicked out of school for wearing black armbands. And they took the case to court. Then it got bumped up to the next court, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. This is a First Amendment deal, and it ends up being like one of the iconic First Amendment challenges in the history of the Supreme Court. Anyway, he's a brilliant guy, an activist par excellence. And just a really smart fellow, and he invents things, which makes his name
even really better.
Yeah. Anyway, so I started putting extra hands in the picture, just because I had extra hands, and things would change while I was shooting. A posture would change or something. somebody do a hand face thing, and then they'd maybe cross their arms and especially if I'd already covered that territory, so they could sort of relax their right arm now, and they came up with something else that, oh wait, I like that too. So I would and do all of that, and so I would have multiple hands to work with, and sometimes it was just too much fun to put more hands in there, and it makes it seem like, well, it doesn't really make it seem like they're moving, but they are in different positions, and there are different moments in time. And this is another thing, trying to analyze how, what parts of the brain are actually active when you're looking at these pictures. And they do, I believe, sort of trigger the parts of the brain that are responsible for interpreting movement. Movement usually means, that something has moved. Now, these, of course, don't have the literal movement from here to here, but somehow we got from here to here, and the brain is sort of processing this information.
Yeah, I always think what I found really interesting about looking through your works here in the gallery is, at first glance, my brain almost took out the extra hands, but it was also going, wait, something's not right here. And then you start seeing them. And one of the things that you said in your artist statement was that these photographs are like a conversation. And I think that that's very telling in those hands, because like myself, a lot of people do talk with their hands. And so you see that movement almost happening there.
Oh yeah, it's the second most expressive part of the body. I don't consider it a portrait, at least not one of my portraits, unless there's hands in it. Just because they're so, if you want to have an expressive portrait, you want to, use as many of the expressive tools as expressive tools that you have to work with.
So I am curious on one other thing. So in your artist statement, you really do talk about hands and facial expressions. Is there anything that you do in particular, like related to the eyes? And the reason I ask that is, walking through our gallery, that's what I get drawn to in almost all of your images, is the eyes of the subject. Like, I feel like I'm really seeing them.
Well, I coach my subjects a little bit. And I have various things that I ask them to do. It's not everybody gets the same request, but they're all sort of aimed at the same sort of thing. One of the things that I ask them to do is pretend that they're already the portrait, and that they're hanging on a wall, and somebody's coming up and looking at them, and you are on the wall looking back at them, kind of like those J.R. Rawlings paintings on the wall of what's the guy's name? What's the movie?
You're thinking Harry Potter, the ones that move?
Harry Potter, yeah. Oh. Harry Potter, where those pictures are actually moving and even waving at people going by, and making commentary and so on. So some people relate to that approach, and one of the things I really don't want to do, which happens, I don't know what to me, like a really large percentage of the time, I could make up a statistic, like the politicians do nowadays, but I don't know what that would be, and I wouldn't know how to figure it out. But a large percentage of people, pictures of people, are a documentation of their reaction to being photographed, as opposed to capturing their personality or one of their quirks or some little subtle thing about who they are. Most people are, and especially if you're being forced to be photographed, you have to be in this picture, and so you come up with what I call the lock and load smile. Lock it in and hold your breath. And if the photographer's taking too long, you're cussing at him under your breath. Get this over with. I know some people are relating to what I'm the way I'm doing.
Oh, trust me, I know for a fact that most of my family is right now. So
Yeah. Anyway, so let me see. Back to the eyes. Another thing I ask everybody is that they, when it comes to the eyes, I actually only spend a small amount of time on the eyes, but I do spend a very concentrated period of time with them. I ask them to look down the barrel of the lens all the way to the fill plane. And they say, well, where's that? And I said, well, on my camera, on the top of the camera, there's this little symbol that shows where the film is. It's way in the back of the camera. So, and when you look down the lens, you don't actually see the film plane, but at least you know where it is. And I'm asking them to focus their eyes on that plane. And I only do one eye at a time. So I'll do the left eye and maybe do 3 or 4 shots there. And then I'll move to the right eye and do some more of there. Then I'll wander off somewhere, and then I'll come back to the eyes and do another couple of eyes going back and forth. Keeping in mind, I'm not really thinking about it, but whatever. There's different moments in time being recorded here. That left eye is probably part of a slightly different facial expression than the left eye. They're not from the same moment in time. They're from different ones. And so that sometimes creates an interesting, a little back and forth, trying to resolve what's going on here. If it gets too distorted, I discard that and try some other combination. I'm not looking for distortion. I'm certainly not looking to make grotesqueries, which would be really easy to do. I've seen them. Oh, it all has to do with the size. Okay, that's Jorge Rojas. I thought I'd show you one little. Actually, I don't have Jorge here, but I have one of these other ones. I have this one from the Chuck Barth picture. Hold on, can you see this? This is a rough sketch. Let's see here. There we go. It's a rough sketch. I've cut up my proof sheets. So I have all these little 1 inch by 1.5 inch rectangles, and they're all over the place here. And I, pick this eye and try those out, and then try another eye instead. And so this gives me sort of a preliminary idea of what I have to work with. Lets me know a little bit about what kind of trouble I've gotten myself into. And sometimes it tells me what I least want to think here is you got to reshoot.
A couple quick questions on the shooting process. So one, how long does a session like that take? And then two, at the end of the session, how many photographs do you have? And then how many end up making it into the final image?
Okay, the sessions, you're getting a different answer if you ask my subjects. An hour, actual camera work, maybe 45 minutes. But not all that time do you feel like you're really being intimidated. I might be down here photographing your elbow, but that doesn't really feel uncomfortable. When I'm really close to the face, that's when things are just a little bit uncomfortable, maybe. I don't know. Speaking of discomfort, I think almost everybody has a certain amount of discomfort being photographed. And especially if you're going to like a studio and you don't know this photographer guy, and they're going to do this and that, and they're going to make you laugh, or they're going to say, 1, 2, 3, or they're going to hold up a birdie, or whatever they're going to do. And you don't like this. You don't like pictures of yourself. Let's say, for instance, you have a history of not having any good pictures of yourself, and this one's probably just fall in that same category. And because you've got this attitude, the chances of that being another bad picture of you are increased. Anyway, oh shoot, I forgot where I was going with that. Anyway, what did you really want to know?
I was, so you answered the question how long the session takes. I was
Oh,
curious,
yeah.
how many photographs do you take in that session?
Um, Somewhere around 7 rolls of film, times
Wow.
36, a couple hundred. Yeah, I go through a lot of film. This is Jorge. He's a performance artist, and this is one of his performances where he's doing tortilla readings, like tea leaf readings, reading fried tortillas, and that little brown and white pattern that shows up as a result of browning a piece of bread. It's all just it's got about as much integrity, or about as much true value as, say, horoscopes but actually I thought it had a great deal of value because it was like going to a psychotherapist.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny how this little ritual sort of opened me up. I was telling him things that I'd not told anybody else. I was admitting to certain emotions that I really didn't let others onto, fears and concerns and whatever. I was surprised at myself for unloading so much while he was doing this, because he would basically ask me questions. It was like going to a psychotherapist. It really was. Anyway, so right after that, we did this portrait, and it got real Hindu-esque, I think, didn't it?
Yes.
I think he's got 2, 4, 6. I think he's got 8 hands in there. And so I just sort of turned him into a shaman.
Yeah,
It's a lot of great texture, which is one of the things that I really enjoy about this process. When you get so close, you can really record texture well. You can see the texture of the subject matter really well when you're close, or when you're using a big negative. I'm just using 35 millimeter negative, so if I stand back at 6 feet or 7 feet away in order to take this whole picture like this, I'm not going to get that kind of detail. And texture is not something that the viewer is going to notice, but it's really hard not to notice the texture of the actual material when you're doing this. So it's very high resolution.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, David, honestly, I could talk to you for at length about this. I really, really, really love your work.
Yeah, I talk at length.
But before we move on to our 7 with Kevin, is there anything else that you would like to share about this exhibit, or any story about any of the photographs that we have, or just anything before we go on?
Yeah, it's kind of a lengthy. Well, I'll just start out with one word: dimensions. I like to think about multiple dimensions. This is sort of part of my own personal cosmology, thinking about myself in this dimension here, but you're in another dimension. We're going cross-dimensional here. Other dimensional shifts would be like when you shift from one language to another. If you're a multilingual person and you go back and forth between Spanish and English, or French and German or something, I think of those as sort of a different dimension. It's a different mindset. You're thinking differently. You're in a different context. You just inherited a different history when you do that. Another really tangible sense of dimensional shift is diving into a pool of water. Where you're out in the air here, and then all of a sudden you're submerged in the water, and that's really a different dimension, one that you can't survive in very long, but you can stay in it long enough to sort of have sensations, real sensations. And the part of that whole thing is, for me, is the plane that defines the difference between one dimension and another. There's a plane, the surface of the water, and I have a particular interest in the splash. That the splash sort of is the transition. It's this little event, this little explosion that happens when you go from one dimension to another. And not all dimensional shifts are explosions, but the surface, the moving through that plane is is sort of where I'm taking that's when I pull my camera out. So half in and half out of two different dimensions or more. So I think that's the point I wanted to make, probably.
Excellent. Well, I think there is a lot of your images that have definitely achieved that moment of transition, for sure. So, David, thank you for having a conversation with us tonight, and also thank you for showcasing your work at Quad City Arts. We really appreciate it. I do have one more set of questions before we depart this evening, and that is our 7 with Kevin questions. Are you ready for 7 with Kevin?
Sure.
All right. So here's our lightning round. What are you currently watching on TV or Netflix?
I just watched. Oh man, I have terrible memory for these. I don't remember titles. I just watched Big Fish.
Yes.
Do you know that one?
Yes. Oh yeah.
But
the Tim Burton film, correct?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. That was pretty interesting.
It's one of my favorites, actually.
I favor films that have a sort of a nice, strong philosophical, problem-solving, musing sort of thing. That's the kind of movie I like the most.
Excellent. Star Wars or Star Trek?
I think Star Wars. I think I like Star Wars.
Good answer.
Star Trek has this, what's it called? The intervent where there's this guiding rule where you're not supposed to influence any new civilization that you encounter.
Oh, yes.
The Prime
Directive.
Prime Directive.
Yep.
Yeah. Prime Directive.
All right.
That's what I have trouble with. I have trouble with because I can't keep my fingers out of it.
I was going to say you're too busy being all up in their face. And,
yeah. We did this to this civilization.
All right, David, where's the best pizza in the Quad Cities? And if you don't have one in the Quad Cities, where's the best pizza where you are from?
Well, where I'm from is Cedar Rapids, and I would say Needs Pizza. I haven't had pizza in the Quad Cities, although I did have Mexican just down the street from you at El Patron.
El Patron, yeah, just about a block and a half away. Oh yeah, we're big fans of theirs here for sure.
Yeah.
What is your favorite book?
My favorite one currently is I have a couple of them, fiction and nonfiction. I got two categories. Fiction would be My Name is Red by Orhan Pamuk. He's a Turkish Nobel Pulitzer Prize winning literature recipient. He writes this book about an artist in an Islamic workshop where they're illustrating books, and each one of the scribes or each one of the artists is assigned a different color. So they just they add their color and then they pass this document on to the next person, and this guy's color was red. So My Name is Red.
Excellent.
That was it.
I am adding that to my. I wrote down the title so I can add that to my reading list. So thank you. Where's your go-to place for inspiration?
Go to. Where do I go to? Mexico, probably. Oaxaca.
Excellent. what profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Still?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Or go back in time and start over?
I would say either or. That's up to you.
Well, I've often thought about, or I've often wished I was an architect. I think architecture would be interesting, but I'd have to get a lot more three-dimensional in order to be an architect.
Well, your work in texture would certainly come into play there. So
Yeah, and light.
yes. And then my last question is, if you could have a drink with any artist, living or dead, who would it be?
Well, I've got my feelers out to try to connect up with David Hockney, my inspiration. He's very hard to get to. He's got like 2 or 3 layers of insulation between him and the rest of the world. Otherwise, I'm sure he would be inundated with young artists who want to stop by and interrupt his process.
I was going to say, I have a feeling that it would be more than just a drink. I have a feeling you'd want to create an image with him. So
exactly, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. We both smoke cigarettes, and we're both incorrigible about it. So I got some little in there.
Yeah, excellent. Well, David, thank you so much for talking with us this evening and spending some time. And again, I'll let everybody know that your work is on display here until Saturday, August 15th, and to definitely come on down and to stop down from noon to 2 that day to meet you. So
right, noon to 2, right. Okay.
Yeah. So again, David, thank you for all the work that you've done, and it was a pleasure talking with you this evening.
Yeah, it was fun. It's fun. I got a lot more to say, though. I tell you.
Trust me. I think I could sit here and talk to you at least twice as long, if not more. So I'll definitely have to stop by on the 15th to continue this conversation.
Okay. All right. We'll do that.
Excellent. Well, thank you, David. All right, we're going to check back in with Ron and see if he's able to join us this evening. Ron is, again, I'll remind you that work is on display here at Quad City Arts in downtown Rock Island. Ron's work is entitled Jazz Noir Images, and we'll talk about more of that soon. You can actually see some of those images directly behind me. So please welcome back, Ron.
Yeah, hi, Kevin. You hear me
Loud
now?
and clear. This is
Good,
perfect.
good.
Excellent.
Yeah. Thank you for having me tonight.
Oh, our pleasure, honestly. It's always interesting whenever we can test to see how connections are, sound quality, and you get to showtime and who knows. So
yeah. Been there, done that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, you're coming through loud and clear. So Ron, before we jump in, where are you joining us from this evening?
I'm joining you from the beautiful acreage in South Amana of Apple House Bed and Breakfast.
Excellent. Well, I'm actually going to touch base on your bed and breakfast story here towards the end. But before we get to that, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in photography.
Sure. Well, I was born and raised in Iowa here. I haven't lived my entire life here. I spent about 8 years in Indiana after I got out of school. I'm a retired electrical engineer. I worked for 30 years at Rockwell Collins in Cedar Rapids, actually exactly 30 years. And before that, I spent 8 years working at the Bell System. I have actually 2 degrees in electrical engineering, but that's my former life, I guess I should say. Now I teach photography at Kirkwood Continuing Education. I currently have 3 classes that I teach: an intro to photography, an intermediate class, and then an introduction to the digital darkroom with Adobe Lightroom. I really got started, I guess I would say, probably early in life. I can't pin quite an age on it. I remember our family vacations where Dad would photograph with his 35 millimeter camera, and we'd look at slides, places like Yellowstone, the Black Hills, Badlands, Grand Canyon, trips to California, that kind of a thing. But I really got my first start in about the mid 70s when I purchased my first SLR camera, um, just after my freshman year, and really haven't looked back since. And I'm glad that I still have that camera with me. I had some equipment stolen a while back, and fortunately, that was not one of them. But I actually use that class when I'm teaching photography because I can take the lens apart, show the students the aperture blades, the shutter, and so on, which today's digital cameras, you just can't take them apart in that fashion and show those different things
Mhm.
to the students. So that's a very valuable tool that has given me a lot of pleasure over the years. I've always really looked at a lot of photography, enjoyed National Geographic, and those stunning pictures are the kind that make you want to visit those places and see them and actually produce photographs like that. I guess to kind of sum up your question, I would say that I, I really love photography um, because I can show people how I see the world, and I could capture a moment in space and time that will never ever be repeated again. So for me, it's all about capturing memories, and ultimately, photography, to me anyway, in this digital world, is all about the print. Um, I know that a lot of people get excited about seeing your pictures and say, "Hey, I'd like to have one of those hang on my wall or for a present." So, Kevin, how would you like it? If I said, well, "Okay, well, here's your memory stick right here with your birthday present," or would you rather have me give you something like this that you can open up and then hang on the wall? I think, and I encourage all of my students to do a lot of printing of their
Mhm.
photos because I think that's a very valuable process. It takes you out of the digital world into something very tactile that you can touch and feel, hang on the wall, see it every day, and live with it, not have to turn on your computer to look at it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think a lot of times I end up making this point numerous times throughout these Seven with Kevin episodes when we're talking with artists is that you can go on right now to quadcityarts.com. You can check out your and David's work as well as the work of other artists. But at the end of the day, it is not compared. You can't compare it with coming into our gallery and taking a moment to
Right.
see that work, to really experience it. So I completely understand and agree with that. So
Yeah.
Ron, did you take classes in photography, or was yours? Did you kind of just sort of figure that out on your own, or talking with people, or?
Initially, when I first started out, I had no formal training in photography. The technical aspects of it were pretty simple to me. The cameras today now are not just cameras, but they're cameras and computers. So I have some real challenges in teaching people um, to use their cameras. But I was able to actually get. Initially, I was just into color photography, and I really kind of cut my teeth on Kodachrome 64, a beautiful slide film. Um, that's sadly no longer with us, but I got an introduction to black and white photography by a man by the name of Lee Regal, who taught at Kirkwood Continuing Education, and I got to be good friends with him. And eventually, when he became stricken with cancer, he recommended that I take over teaching his photography program, and so I'm forever grateful for him introducing me to black and white photography. I've really always loved black and white, but I was strictly kind of a color guy. So
Mhm.
um, now I'm kind of almost uh, the opposite. I shoot more in mind with black and white as the final end, and then go color where it's appropriate.
Interesting. So it's a good timing. We've got a question here from Melinda that would you ever consider doing a show in color?
Well, yeah, I sure would. The specific show and the images that are up now the low key, and the particular venue at the Iowa City Jazz Festival lends itself more to black and white.
Hmm.
And the primary reason for that is all of these images that are taken in performances at dark have artificial lighting. And if you've been to
Hmm.
any of these concerts, they tend to have kind of, from a photographic standpoint, I would say squirrely colors like magenta lights and green lights. So um, it looks good in terms of the performance and to the audience, but in terms of producing a color photograph, um, skin tones especially can really be out of whack,
Hmm.
and so that's why I would go to black and white for the low key images. However, in the daylight performances, um, uh, yes, I do produce color photographs there.
Excellent. So let's actually talk a little bit about Jazz Noir,
Yes,
the exhibit that you have up
yes,
currently at Quad City Arts. So here's this is I think one of my favorite images here in the gallery. It's also the one that we put on the show card. It is it's quite striking. So I guess can you just talk to us a little bit about where the concept from Jazz Noir came, and did you go
sure.
to the Iowa Jazz Festival with this in mind?
Okay, a lot of stuff
Yeah, I
there.
know.
Let's start out by saying this image is really kind of where it all started. This is from the 2013 uh, Iowa City Jazz Festival. And before I forget, I'd like to shout out to Lisa Barnes, the executive director of the festival, for her kind offering to give us media passes so I could get access to the stage. Um, but this image is of the saxophonist Pharoah Sanders, who um, played with the late and great Johnny Coltrane. I believe Pharoah is he's a Grammy nominee for sure, and I think he is an award winner. Um, but like I said, this is the image that started it all. My wife had mentioned um, we both love jazz, and we'd never been to the Iowa City Jazz Festival. So she said, Pharoah Sanders is going to be performing. Let's go down there and maybe take some pictures of him. And then I blindly sent a letter to the director, Lisa Barnes, and asked for some media passes, and she graciously gave them to me. Um, Pharoah Sanders is quite a photogenic individual. He's definitely up there in years, like we're all getting, but that striking, I wouldn't call it so much gray as in white here, makes a great contrast, and the particular lighting on him from this angle creates for me anyway, a pretty powerful image. And this image, I entered it in the Iowa State Fair in 2015. It won one of their major awards. It's been exhibited in the Scottish International Exhibition of Photography. It's also been published in Black and White magazine. And I also got to give kudos to my wife for the inspiration behind this series. She also encouraged me to enter Black and White Magazine's portfolio competition, which highlighted the series. Now, the concept for Jazz Noir, um, I'm a fan of the film noir, Hollywood cinematic approach. Um, some of the classics like Casablanca,
Hmm.
Double Indemnity, just have this very dramatic lighting style, which quite often is very low key, but is also I would call a minimalist style, which in a dark environment where they have artificial lighting, you can easily eliminate a lot of the backgrounds, whereas in a day performance, um, trying to do some darkroom magic and make them look like what you see in the exhibit now is extremely extremely difficult, and quite often just doesn't quite work
Hmm.
um, the way I would like it to. But the jazz noir, I came up that with that idea as noir is a French word meaning dark film, or film noir. Um, but looking at the film noir and then creating these images, I wanted to craft them in that style with my own particular twist and interpretation to it. Um, these the one challenge that I have a lot of fun with is it's not like a studio setting in which I can have the artists come in and position studio lights and get the exact kind of lighting that I want. I have to work exactly with what's there, what the artist is doing, the music, and I really find the inspiration comes from the music. And some artists are more animated in their performance
Hmm.
than others, as you can imagine. But the music will really inspire me to take pictures because I've gone to photograph some groups, and I'm just not feeling the groove, and
Hmm.
the pictures kind of show that. This particular image is from the 2017 festival. The artist name is Cecil McBee. He is a Grammy Award winner, and this was him performing with the group Cookers during a solo. Now, the interesting thing about this photo, and why I wanted to talk about it a little bit, was um, it was also submitted to Black and White magazine in their 2018 portfolio competition. Um, and when you're a Merit Award winner, they give you a two-page spread, and you submit anywhere between 8 and 12 photos, but they don't tell you which ones they're going to publish. You just get an email that says, "Congratulations, you're a Merit Award winner." So um, when I went to Barnes and Noble to check out the issue when it was out, um, to my surprise, I'm thumbing through the magazines and I see it tucked in the back, and then um, I pull it out, and I don't know if you guys can
Yeah.
see that there. I go, holy, you know what? That's my picture on the cover, and I didn't know it. They didn't tell me, uh, so that that was quite. I'm almost still in a little bit of shock, but uh, quite a feather in my cap, if I may do a little bragging there. But um, it was something quite unexpected, and I'm just really tickled to have a photo on the cover of a magazine there.
Yeah, that is, I mean, obviously it is an impressive photo, but I can imagine, walking in to just, to get a magazine so you could see your photos inside the magazine is already a really great honor. And then to pull that out and go,
Yeah,
oh, wow, that's,
yeah, yeah. Wow. Um, yeah, I was in quite shock there.
yeah, no, that is definitely, that's amazing. So, uh, yeah, I think we have another image that you wanted
Yes.
to highlight and talk about that's in our show here. And I will remind everybody watching that um, this exhibit is up at Quad City Arts, downtown Rock Island until August 15th. And on August 15th, we'll have an artist meet and greet from noon to 2. So everybody can check out the work and, meet you and talk about, ask any questions as well.
Yeah. Okay. This is a photo of the artist Adam Cruz. He performed at a couple of different jazz festivals. I photographed him before. I don't remember offhand which year this was, but um, one of my favorite portrait style lightings for people that take formal portrait pictures in a studio is called Rembrandt lighting.
Hmm.
And if you'll look at his face on his left eye to the viewer's right, you'll see this little lighted patch, a triangle under his eye, and that's a classic signature of a Rembrandt lighting where the main light source or the key light source is 45 degrees off the subject and about 45 degrees high. The shadow of the nose will give that little triangle, and it's called Rembrandt from the Dutch painter Rembrandt, and that is one of my favorite portrait lightings to photograph someone in. Now, as I mentioned, I can't control any of that, but some of the things that I would look for are some unique angles in which I can get a type of lighting that is very dramatic across a performer's face. And in particular, for the drummer, I used to play drums, and for jazz, drumming is quite a bit different from, say, rock or pop music, where the driving force behind the beat is called the backbeat, and people, when you're clamping your hands to that on 2 and 4 of the beat, well, that doesn't work at all in jazz. The driving force behind jazz in the drummer is the ride cymbal, and so I'm really trying to convey here, and I can feel that when he's actually playing and performing the music, is he's really concentrating on getting that feel of the ride cymbal, and that's what moves the time forward in jazz and really makes the music sing. So that's considerably different jazz versus, say, pop or rock music today.
Yeah, no, you're
And
right. With his eyes, were right there. Like you can almost feel the rhythm of the piece and definitely of the photo. So,
and my wife got me a book for Christmas on Rembrandt. So I love to study the masters, as I call them, and I also encourage my students to study the masters of photography or find their favorite photographies, of which Ansel Adams, Henry
mhm.
Cartier-Bresson, Chinese photographer Van Ho are. Study those styles, look at other art forms, try to identify, well, does this particular photographer like soft light, hard light? Does he use wide angle lenses more, or does he tend to favor certain focal lengths, apertures, and so on? Not to necessarily copy their style, but to understand how that particular person is using photography and tools to craft images to help you be a better photographer.
So along those same lines, is there a particular photographer that you have taken inspiration from or taken note of a technique?
Oh yeah. Those three that I mentioned, they're Ansel Adams,
Hmm.
the master of landscape photography. Henry Cartier-Bresson, he was the French photographer that coined the term the decisive moment. That is, when you press your shutter to take the picture, if you did it just a little bit before or a little bit later than when you took it, it wouldn't have the same effect to it.
Hmm.
So I get that inspiration for taking these photos, because sometimes they get it right and sometimes they don't. I got to get the decisive of a moment. And then Fan Ho, a Chinese photographer, was I just really admire his use of backlighting and high contrast to achieve some very dramatic images. So I encourage. I share that with my students and encourage them to find some of their own too.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to shift gears. I'll say a little bit, but really a lot.
Sure.
So you've obviously talked about your wife a few times in tonight, and so when we had our phone conversation, I asked you, outside of photography, do you have a hobby? And you told me that you and your wife recently bought a bed and breakfast. Can we talk about that a little bit? I think that's great.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, the name of the B&B is Apple House, and that's spelled Haus, the German spelling, because we we're in our address is South Amana, although we are not really physically in the village of South Amana. We're a few miles away from it. We're actually the only rural bed and breakfast in the Amanas. We have 10 acres, um, some extensive walking trails for people to explore our little woodlands here, and we have a great venue for looking at sunsets and you know, on my website there, which you know maybe we'll mention here a little bit. Uh, you'll see some examples of some of the spectacular sunsets that we have here. Very dark skies. Um, and for people that like to look at the night sky, this is a great place to come. So watch wildlife too. We see lots of deer and some eagles and other lot of woodpeckers too that can be a nuisance sometimes.
So I'm curious, what made you guys decide to buy a bed and breakfast?
Well, it was kind of a dream of my wife's to do that, and we thought we were always looking for some rural property and wanted to live away from the city, and we thought, hey, here's um, a great property, and it can help pay for itself. And on my dad's side, my great grandparents immigrated from Saxony, Germany, and helped found the Amana colonies in the 1850s. So, you know, there's some long family ties here to the Amanas.
Interesting. Ron, got a couple questions here for you. First one being, what do you like to photograph?
Uh, okay. Well, besides jazz, I would say just about anything that really kind of catches my eye. I used to be primarily a landscape photographer, um, but I've really evolved for quite a few years um, into shooting more people, some portraits. Um, I've had a lot of fun the last couple weeks photographing my nieces and nephews. Um, that can be quite a challenge as they move very fast, and so your autofocus and your use of your autofocus system gets put to the test. um, but I guess I like to have a camera with me pretty much all the time. That is my mirrorless camera. Um, have that with me as often as I can, cell phone in a pinch, and photograph whatever, like I said, whatever captures my eye. Horses here I've done lately, and been trying to do a series on and portfolio on horses too.
Excellent. And from the same person, do you have a favorite subject from this year?
Um, well, I guess uh, this year, besides, I'll answer that by saying outside shooting more jazz. Unfortunately, this year's festival was canceled.
Yeah.
I think next year we'll be um, in better shape. But I've done a lot of I would say like rural landscapes, sunsets, and trying to capture some of the essence of Amana and rural lifestyle too.
Excellent. All right, Ron, is there anything else you'd like to share before we move on to Seven with Kevin?
Well, I don't think so. I just like to shout out to my wife for all the support, especially to Lee Regal, although he's no longer with us. Great friend and mentor, um, got me started in the what we call the wet dark room. I wish I had taken that up initially, because he got me started in the black and white photography by saying, "I guarantee you that if you take my black and white darkroom class, that you're going to be a better photographer whether or not you stick with black and white, because color can be a great distraction. Black and white reduces the image to light, shadows, composition. And so I really got hooked onto that. Um, got my own dark room with Lee's help too, and kind of the rest is history. Now I'm pretty much all digital now.
Excellent. All right. Well, we're going to move on to 7 with Kevin. Ron, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All
Fire
right.
away.
What are you currently watching on Netflix or TV?
I guess I would say pretty much anything on TCM. The classic movies are just love that. I think the last one I saw was the Kane Mutiny. Like I said, Casablanca. I love that. Love Humphrey Bogart. Big fan
Oh,
of
yeah.
his.
Excellent. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Oh, that's easy. Beam me up, Scotty.
Excellent. Where's the best pizza in the Quad Cities or where you're from?
Well, I don't know about the Quad Cities. I sure like the Mexican over on the other side of the river, the Blue Iguana. But you're asking for pizza.
Yeah.
So actually, my wife makes a pretty mean pizza. And when she doesn't feel like cooking, I hate to say this, but the come and go um, makes probably the best Hawaiian and also pretty good bacon cheeseburger pizza too.
Excellent. Excellent. What's your favorite book?
Uh, Hunt for Red October. Although I like a lot of other Tom Clancy novels, Red Storm Rising too.
Yeah, all right. Where's your go-to place for inspiration?
I would say go to be out in nature, especially here at Apple House. I just walk outside in a clear night. Looking at the night sky is just absolutely fabulous. I got a great view of the comet here, um, and listening to music too.
Excellent. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Well, I think that's a difficult question to answer. How many hours do we have here? But well, I think for one, I might have taken my career in a little different um, venue. I grew up in the with my father working the same place that I did in the space program, and I think maybe taking my talents and doing something in the space program, space flight, or robotic exploration of the planets. I would have loved to worked on something going to Mars. Or another thing, I did have some flight training as part of my job. I really, I don't particularly like flying as a passenger. It's kind of a hassle, but um, I did like sitting in that left seat and being the pilot in command. There's nothing like flying an airplane. It's real thrill. So maybe I would have been a pilot.
Excellent. All right. Final question. If you could have a drink with any artist, living or dead, who would it be?
Oh, that's pretty easy. I would have picked Ansel Adams because um, not only is he the master of landscape photography, what I would have wanted to do with him is he is also a master of printing. I've read his books on printing and studied a lot of his prints, and I would have loved to spend time with him in the dark room, and I mean the true chemical dark room. Um, it's it's still the first time I did it. It's very magical when you expose that print, shove it in the developer. You're in. If you're doing black and white photography, it's under red safe lights, and I'm sure people have seen this in the movies. You throw the print into the developer, and then the image comes up in about 10 seconds. It's just a kind of a very magical thing to do, and I really learned how to actually create the Jazz Noir images, which were all digital, all printed with inkjet printers. I don't think I ever would have been able to make that unless I had that darkroom experience, traditional darkroom experience. So
Excellent.
Ansel Adams in the darkroom, yeah.
Perfect. Ron, it's been a pleasure talking with you this evening, and thank you for showcasing your work here at Quad City Arts. So
Well,
thank you very much.
yeah, thank you, Kevin, for having me. It was a lot of fun, and thank you for
Good.
hosting my exhibit too. That's a
Oh,
real privilege.
well, it is our pleasure. So thanks again, Ron.
All right, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you again to David and Ron for having our conversation with us this evening. To all of you that tuned in live, thank you so much. To all of you that are watching us later, thank you as well. Before we go, I want to remind you how you can connect with both Ron Meyer and David Van Allen. You can visit them on their websites as well as some of their social media. And don't forget, you can meet them in our downtown Rock Island Gallery on August 15th. That's Saturday. From noon to 2 p.m. And just a reminder, in our gallery in downtown Rock Island, masks are required. As always, this is a team effort, so thank you to everyone here at Quad City Arts. A very special shout out to our visual arts director, Dawn Wolford Metallo, for coordinating our galleries and hanging this great show. Don't forget, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, and visit our website to learn more. And as always, thank you so much for watching.